I'm Morgan Bennett, 29, and this morning they kicked me out of my own company like I was a temp. No warning, no apology, just a three-line email severing me from the legacy my father built, and the role I fought to earn. The lobby of Bennett Technologies felt like a stranger's estate, my security badge clipped to my lapel, serving as a cruel reminder that I no longer belong inside. My stepmother Denise watched me leave with a latte in hand and that practiced smile that hides knives. Yet a note on my windshield and one line of Dad's handwriting told me everything I needed to know. If they ever try to push you out, remember, what's hidden is often yours. I watched the conference room through the glass. One leather chair empty, waiting for me. If you've ever been erased by blood and boardroom alike, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, subscribe, and join me as I reveal exactly how I plan to reclaim what's mine. If this kind of story resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter. Let's begin. They kicked me out of the boardroom like I was some forgotten intern. No explanation, no apology, just silence. The October air in San Francisco had that sharpness I used to love, before everything turned cold for real. I stood in the lobby of Bennett Technologies, my name still etched on the glass outside, but no longer whispered in the halls within. The security badge clipped to my blazer suddenly felt more like an insult than an identity. The email had come at 7:02 a.m. Subject: Board Restructure Agenda. Message: Ms. Bennett, your attendance is not required. That was it. No greeting, no signature. Just three lines that severed me from the company my father built and I helped grow. I had always known Denise didn't want me in that room. My stepmother wore civility like designer sunglasses, expensive, reflective, and cold. Ryan and Sienna, her children, had long hovered around the board like vultures, just waiting for an opportunity to strike. And now it seemed they had. As the elevator doors slid shut behind me, I caught a glimpse of the conference room down the hall. All glass and chrome, soulless and pristine. A row of leather chairs surrounded the long oval table, and in the middle, one seat remained empty. Mine. I walked past reception, where the assistant averted her eyes. Denise emerged from the hallway with a latte in hand, her heels clicking against the marble floor like punctuation marks in a silent sentence. She gave me a smile polished by decades of manipulation. "Morgan," she said smoothly, "I wasn't expecting to see you this morning." "I could say the same," I replied, my voice steady. She gestured vaguely toward the elevator. "You must have received the email. Things are streamlining. It's nothing personal." I gave a slow nod. "Of course. Nothing ever is." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flinched. She turned, walking off without another word. In the garage, I found a note on my windshield, tucked under the wiper like a parking ticket from fate. The envelope was cream-colored, hand-addressed. I recognized the handwriting. Gregory Mason. Gregory had served as CFO for over 2 decades. He retired 2 months ago, citing health reasons, but I'd always suspected Denise had pressured him out. Inside the envelope was a folded sheet of paper. On it, a single line in my father's handwriting. "If they ever try to push you out, remember, what's hidden is often yours." Beneath it, clipped with a rusted paperclip, was a draft document titled Discretionary Trust. Phase 2. My heart thudded. The trust. I remembered vague mentions of it in passing years ago. Something about asset protection, long-term succession. But this was real. A document. My father's signature space still blank. But even in its unfinished state, it felt like a breadcrumb in a trail he'd left only for me. I stared at the marble wall of the parking structure, my reflection warped and split by the harsh lighting. They thought they'd buried me under procedure. They didn't know I'd been left a map. I didn't leave the company. I just haven't played all my cards yet. They thought they erased me with a vote. But my father had prepared for this long before the vultures circled. Rain tapped against the glass like whispered warnings, steady and unrelenting. I sat cross-legged on the edge of the couch, wrapped in an old knit blanket I hadn't touched in years. The penthouse was quiet except for the occasional crackle of firewood behind me and the rhythmic patter against the wide Marina District windows. The city glittered below, unaware of the quiet war brewing above it. The envelope still sat on the marble coffee table beside a USB labeled in my father's familiar scrawl, Phoenix. I hesitated before plugging it in. The screen flickered to life. My father's face filled the frame, looking older than I remembered, wearier. But his voice, steady, firm, like always. If this ever lands in your hands, it means I'm no longer here to protect you. My breath caught. Even in death, he still spoke like a strategist, never wasting words. The video continued, outlining terms from a document I hadn't seen until last night. The discretionary trust, phase 2. You're the majority shareholder now, Morgan. 51%? The moment they move to exclude you without unanimous consent, the trust activates. I stared at the screen, disbelief bleeding into cold fury. My father had seen it coming. Denise, Ryan, Sienna, they thought they were playing chess. But they never realized Dad had already drawn the checkmate square in ink. Alongside the video, a folder blinked open. Inside were time-stamped board meeting recordings, emails, annotated documents. One file, dated 2 weeks before his death, was titled Contingency, Board Override. And there it was. If Morgan is unlawfully removed from voting rights, she has the legal authority to reclaim executive control within 7 days. The clause pulsed on the screen like a heartbeat. I reached for the sealed legal folders Gregory had quietly passed to me years ago, back when I was still in graduate school. I thought he was being sentimental, paying respect to Dad's legacy. But now I understood. He was preserving a weapon. Beside the documents, the Rolex, my father's, its leather strap cracked with age, still ticking, still loyal. I wound it carefully and set it to 12 o'clock midnight. A new day. Tears welled, but they didn't fall. I wasn't sad. I wasn't broken. I was remembering. Dad didn't raise me to beg. He raised me to rebuild. I clutched the USB, pressing it to my chest like a blueprint to resurrection. I wasn't waiting to be invited back. I was preparing to take everything. With 2 days left before they signed away my company, I started building a new kind of boardroom, one made of people who still had a conscience. The Rolex on my wrist ticked steadily toward the deadline. Midnight now marked not just the hour, but the countdown. 48 hours. That was all I had to dismantle the empire they'd built on betrayal. Zachary Liu answered my text within minutes. Meet me at the sub-basement loading dock. No cameras there. The air was dense with rain as I pulled up to the back entrance. Once used for deliveries, now my new way in. Zach, in his rumpled hoodie and badge lanyard, looked like he hadn't slept in days. Or maybe he hadn't since the last time this company had integrity. They still think you're locked out of the system, he said. Let's keep it that way. We moved fast. Inside a dim IT control room, he guided me to a console shielded from the network. These are the digital votes from the last board session. Watch this. Ryan initiated override access on your restricted folder. That's a felony, Morgan. Not a clerical error. I stared at the screen. The audit logs weren't just timestamps. They were proof of desperation, of criminal intent. I saved everything. Zach said quietly. Your dad backed me once when legal tried to cut my team. I never forgot. I nodded. No thanks were needed between people still holding the line. Upstairs in the deserted East Wing, Leah Tran waited in her glass-walled office. She didn't rise when I entered, just slid a manila folder across her desk. I've had this for weeks, she said. Denise negotiated with Reynolds Corporation to outsource half our R&D in exchange for voting support. If the board knew, they'll know, I interrupted. She exhaled hard. I kept quiet after your father died. I thought loyalty meant staying neutral. But this isn't neutral. When she finally looked up, I saw the guilt in her eyes, but also something else. Resolve. By 3 a.m., I was back in my penthouse. Lights low, fire crackling. Lawrence Geller, my father's old legal advisor, arrived in a long coat, briefcase in hand. He moved like a ghost through the space, respectful but not timid. "I reviewed the trust," he said after a long pause. "Everything holds. You have authority to reclaim control, Morgan, but you'll need to present these documents formally at a board session." I took the leather folder from him, weighed it in my hands like it contained more than paper, like it carried gravity. He hesitated before leaving. "Your father knew this day might come. That's why he left you the tools, not the protection." After he left, I sat at my desk and pulled out a clean sheet of paper. Across the top, I wrote, "Those worth saving." Only 3 names made the list: Zach, Leah, and one I hadn't written yet, but hoped would earn it. When I closed my laptop, I whispered to no one. "Now we begin." Zachary's message pinged again, this time with the server log recordings. Ryan's admin override. Denise's off-record votes. The full deck was nearly complete. They thought I was out of time. But the countdown had just begun. For them. I wasn't on the guest list. So I opened the door myself and walked in like I still owned the place. Because I did. November 1st. The frost hadn't yet melted off the windows, but the air inside Bennett Global's top-floor boardroom was colder than the city outside. The mahogany table, polished to a fault, gleamed under the low pendant lights. 11 chairs, 10 occupied. And one, mine, sat at the far end, a cup of coffee steaming quietly in front of it. I opened the door without knocking. Heads turned. Conversations cut mid-sentence. Denise dropped her pen. Ryan blinked 3 times before glancing at Sienna, who was already stiff in her seat. "Good morning," I said evenly, placing a thick envelope in front of each board member as I moved clockwise. I didn't sit yet. Denise found her voice first. "You're not. This meeting is confidential." I smiled. So was the clause in my father's trust. And yet, here we are. Lawrence Geller followed in behind me, silent, carrying his worn briefcase like a judge entering chambers. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence was confirmation. I reached the head of the table, paused, and looked directly at each member, one by one. Then I sat down in the seat they thought they'd erased me from. "You may want to begin reading," I said. "Pages 3 and 7 in particular. You'll find the terms of ownership have shifted since last we met." "Shifted?" Ryan scoffed. "That's absurd. You were voted out illegally," I cut in, pulling a small remote from my coat pocket. The screen at the far end of the room hummed to life. "Let's walk through the timeline, shall we?" I pressed play. Footage from the internal server room filled the screen. Ryan's login credentials, the override sequence, the exact moment he accessed my private folders. Time-stamped, watermarked in high definition. "That's doctored," Sienna muttered. I tilted my head. "That accusation will sound much better in front of a judge." Gasps began to ripple down the table. I let them sink in before continuing. Section 12.4 of the Discretionary Trust. Any vote taken without due process or via compromised access is nullified. Retroactively. Denise's jaw tightened. Even if, hypothetically, you were right, the company would be destabilized. "It already is," I said softly. "You just didn't notice from your seat at the top." Then I looked toward the security camera above the door. With one click, I switched feeds. The screen now showed Zachary Liu live in the IT control room. He held up a clipboard, chain of custody logs clipped in place, documents sealed in evidence pouches. "These logs show every unauthorized access point," he said, voice coming clearly through the speaker, and confirmed the sequence began within Ryan Bennett's admin stack. Sienna gasped audibly. Ryan turned pale. Denise leaned forward slowly, her voice quieter now. "You wouldn't dare." I met her eyes, steady. "I already did." Behind the frosted glass wall, Leah Tran stood just outside the boardroom. She didn't move, but she didn't look away either. And for the first time in days, the Rolex on my wrist felt silent. They silenced me. But my father had the last word, and it played on every screen in that boardroom. The air was thick now, not from cold, but tension. A silence hung in the room like fog, refusing to lift. I didn't say a word. I simply walked to the console at the end of the mahogany table, removed a small silver USB labeled Phoenix, and slid it into the port. The screen blinked, a black background. Then, to my daughter and to those who forgot her. My father's voice followed, calm and clear, but it cut deeper than shouting ever could. "If you're watching this," he began, "I'm no longer there to speak for myself. But that's the thing about foresight. You can still have a voice, even in silence." Denise's eyes narrowed. Ryan shifted in his seat. Sienna stared, frozen. I created this trust not to keep the company intact, but to protect it from those who believe legacy is inherited, not earned. My father continued. Morgan didn't ask for power. She earned it, by understanding what this company is really built on. Not margins, not headlines, but people. He paused. A long, deliberate breath filled the space between his words. "Ryan, your ambition was never the problem. Your shortcuts were. I covered for you once when that licensing deal nearly bankrupted our biotech wing. But I warned you. I told you then. One more unethical move, and I'd make sure you never touch this company again." Ryan went red, then pale. No one looked at him now. Not even Sienna. The footage cut briefly to a static image. A copy of the trust document, signed and dated, with my name in bold. Morgan Elaine Bennett, primary beneficiary, 51% ownership. Then my father returned to the frame, his tone now firmer. To the board. If Morgan is standing there now, it means she passed the test I left for her. And it means you failed yours. You let convenience blind you. You let manipulation sit at the head of your table. And if you're uncomfortable hearing this, good. That means there's hope for change. He leaned forward slightly. If you're still loyal to the ideals this company was founded on, stand with her. If not, kindly find the door. The screen faded to black. No music, no fade out, just silence. It lasted 5 full seconds before anyone moved. Sienna stood abruptly, eyes glassy, hands trembling. "I didn't know about the biotech deal," she said, barely audible. "I thought we were building something real." And then she left the room. No one stopped her. On the left side of the table, one board member quietly removed his glasses, looked down at the trust copy before him, and whispered, "I resign." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight of his words fell like a gavel. Ryan stood up next. "This is a setup, an ambush." He didn't get to finish. 2 individuals by the door, legal observers in neutral suits, stepped forward and blocked his exit. "This isn't a criminal proceeding," one of them said calmly, "but you're not leaving with company property." Ryan sat back down. The silence returned, and this time, I let it stretch. Only when I was ready did I reach into my coat pocket and remove my father's old Rolex. I held it in my palm for a moment, feeling its weight, remembering how he used to tap the crystal face whenever we were running late. Then I placed it on the center of the table, face up. Tick, tick, tick. The time is mine now. Outside the boardroom, Leah stood with a tablet in hand, already typing. The public statement had begun. The seat they denied me? I didn't just take it. I rebuilt the entire table. It was snowing lightly outside the tall windows of Bennett Global. The boardroom no longer looked like the place I had once been shut out of. The long mahogany table remained, but now flanked by new chairs. Ergonomic, open-backed, inclusive. The portraits on the wall had changed, too. One frame in particular caught the light. My father's photo, newly restored. And beside it, mine. "Meeting is called to order," I said, and the room quieted. 2 months had passed since the video, since the resignations, since silence was replaced by reform. Zachary sat at my left, now Chief Technology Officer, eyes alert. Leah, on my right, as Head of Strategic Communications, poised with a stylus in hand. Across the table, fresh faces, diverse in age, background, and thought. Not yes men, visionaries. We'll begin with 2 initiatives, I said. First, our Ethics Review Board will now include employee-elected members. No more closed-door decisions. Second, we're launching a phased shareholder program for full-time staff. If you build it, you own it. A small ripple of smiles passed across the room. But beneath the calm, I felt something heavier, quieter. A tether still connected me to the past. Later that evening, I walked alone to the top floor. My father's office had been left untouched. I opened the door and inhaled the scent. Old leather, pine from the antique bookshelf, and something indefinable. Time, perhaps. On the desk sat a sealed envelope, yellowed only slightly. The postmark read, October 28th, 2023. The day before his stroke. I sat down in the same chair he once occupied and opened it with careful fingers. You'll do more than survive. You'll lead. And when they realize what that looks like, don't gloat. Just build. That's what the Phoenix does. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing through the ache in my throat. Then I reached into my bag and took out the Rolex. I set it gently on the corner of the desk, where it belonged. Still ticking. Still marking time. And I walked away. Outside, the lights of San Francisco shimmered against the clouds. At the entrance of HQ, a crowd of reporters stood waiting, microphones raised. As I stepped outside, someone shouted, Morgan, what happens next? I paused, smiled. Let's get to work. The boardroom they once used to exile her had become the very place she rewrote the rules. What began as a betrayal ended as a rebirth, not just of power, but of purpose. Justice, delayed by greed and silence, arrived through evidence, resolve, and a daughter's quiet fury. Like the echo of a locked door forced open, truth always finds a way in.